Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Cosmic Conversations with myself, Katie, and Tiarnie. And this one, we say this every time, but this one has definitely been long overdue. Today, we're going to be talking about the fixed sign energy that's really predominant in 2021, but also kind of coming into the next couple of years. But we really wanted to touch on this together because Tiarnie and I are both fixed signs. So I'm Aquarius sun, Tiarnie is Taurus sun. And we really just wanted to kind of hold space and just have a really kind of open astro conversation around this because, we're all feeling it. But if you do have any planets in fixed signs, that energy is kind of coming through tenfold. So Tiarnie, hello. Nice to see you.
Hello, darling. So good to be back. We have just been talking for nearly an hour before we started pressing record to this because not only are we catching up, but we're sharing all the things that we want to share with you all today. And oh my gosh, it's such a juicy conversation and one that actually we've been talking about doing all year. So
yeah. And I think that, what we were kind of saying before hitting record is that, we got the idea to have this conversation at the beginning of the year when we noticed this pattern coming up, but both being fixed signs and having actually multiple placements in fixed signs, I think it was really important, that we both were living through the transits first before even having this conversation with you guys, because there's such a more, depth and wisdom and aha moments and okay, now my whole life makes sense kind of stuff happening just by both kind of, living it these last few months. And also for you guys too, I think that, I don't know about you, Tiarnie, but sometimes, I feel like with astrology, the less we're kind of scrutinizing the placements and just living them, the better we can actually evolve and transcend through them. I think when we're getting too predictive with it, we can actually do ourselves sometimes a bit of a disservice instead of just living it, with what the universe is bringing us in these moments.
Absolutely.
But yeah, we've certainly been living it. Where are we going to
Yes. Oh, well, let's start just with the underpin of Saturn Uranus and what we just got off. We just have literally just gone back year by year by year for you to see how radical this last Saturn Uranus square was, which was also a Taurus Aquarius, which is what we're in now. So we definitely have to talk about that. So, and the year that happened and what was going on then, because we are seeing the nodes in fixed signs back then, Katie, and now they're in mutable signs. And you were talking about the difference, the unique difference in, we go through cycles. Astrology is just cycles. We've got to remember that, right? It's just cycles. We go back, we can have a look at what's going to reemerge, but the chart's not going to look exactly the same. But we were just blown away by going back to 1999, July of 1999 to be exact. Katie got the exact date. We were hovering around it. And Saturn was in Taurus, squaring Uranus in Aquarius, which obviously Uranus in Aquarius is at home. Saturn in Taurus, not a big fan. I think Saturn in Taurus is a difficult placement to have, very restrictive, at 15 degrees. So we've got back in 1999 and now in 2021, Saturn is actually in Aquarius, which is his traditional rulership, and Uranus is in his detriment or fall, whichever, potatoes, in Taurus. So, I mean, let's riff on this for a bit because we've both just gone, oh my God, this was happening for me. What was happening for you? So I've got the date out of the way. Let's just talk about this because we're definitely this is what we're going through. We're talking fixed, and for us to both come on here, fixed charts, and talk about what we've been embodying this year and experiencing with this very, not only this, the square that's happening, but how it's aspecting our planets in our chart. I've the whole time this year just called it, I'm being fucked up the arse. That's pretty much been my analogy of this entire thing. And I'm fine with that, in general, but it's been pretty pressure cookery. But then to go back and have a look that here we are again, and 1999, 20 friggin' 1 years ago, fixed signs again, seriously.
Yeah, it's It's mind-blowing. Like, I'm still a little bit shook, to be honest. Like, and so, you know, Tiarnie and I said, like, you know, we're not going to make this, like, it doesn't have to be super personal with what we were going through. But like, for me right now, I'm kind of just like, my whole life makes sense. Holy fuck. Especially because we also noticed. So just in case you guys missed it, when Tiarnie was saying that in July 99, Uranus was at 15 Aquarius. Sorry. Saturn was at 15 Taurus. And then we also had the South Node at 13 Aquarius. So this is where we were kind of going, oh my God, you know, everything's making sense, because I think that South Node element really comes into it specifically for that time. Like, you know, for me, for example, like 2 weeks after this date of the 18th of July, my parents said they were getting divorced. And that, for me at age 11, like that changed everything. I mean, there's still, you know, like the divine human beings that we are, there's still shit that comes up for me daily around that time period, right? And it's just like, oh my God. And, you know, again, specifically for me, like everything that's happening in 2021 is happening on these same degrees. That's why Tiarnie and I are particularly blown away, just to put that in there, is not that they were just in the reversed signs, but the same kind of stimulation point was the same degrees. I wish I had my Inside Degrees book by Elias Lonsdale with me right now.
I've got it sitting right there.
You want to grab it, please, love? Maybe.
Yes.
It feels important. Yeah, because these same degrees are being stimulated. So this kind of 13, 14, 15 degrees of the fixed signs was really prominent, you know, 20, 21 years ago-ish, as is, you know, these same points now in 2021. So I'm curious, Tiarnie, in particular.
Yes, what do we...
Let's go the midpoint, because this year they turned at, let's go with 14 Aquarius.
14. Oh my God, I'm not shitting you. I've only just opened the book to 14 Aquarius.
Okay,
you
well,
cannot make that shit up.
I trust that judgment then.
You are on fire. Okay. So am I reading Aquarius 15 or Aquarius 14?
Actually, for this, normally it would be, so guys, just to sort of, for those of you that don't know, to work with the degrees, you normally always read a degree up, okay? Because 1 Aquarius is actually 0. But I think for this one, with that kind of link up, let's go with 14 specifically, okay, especially because it's slower moving placements.
Yep. In a pyramid, a dark passageway filled with scorpions. Coming to a point in the journey where everything you fear, all that you wish to avoid, inevitably happens. Your mind's blind spots call up remedial action. Karmic lessons take over. A probationary path of self-testings and self-torments, never letting yourself off easy. Determined almost blindly to expose yourself to the worst. You are particularly drawn to work out collective blind spots and missing pieces. Even willing to take them on, to play with them, to play them through, preferring to be the villain or the gadfly or the devil's advocate to letting well enough alone. You feel irresistibly compelled in both self and world to draw everything up to the surface, to bring it all out, to make it visible and tangible. You have the excessive and redemptive eye for the dark side that must be cleared for free passage to become possible ever again.
Whew. So
that is intense.
I feel a bit exposed because that's my sun degree. So guys, now you know what my solar journey is.
Wow, that is.
Yeah, but you know, anyway, to make it for now, pretty relevant, you know, because I think that one of the biggest themes of this time is, like, if I was to describe what life feels like a lot, it's like a dark passageway, right? Like I feel like a lot of, you know, like ghosts of the past are returning, right? So this South Node in Aquarius in 99, there's a lot of things that have been repressed or you thought you dealt with, or I've had years of therapy for this. Why am I still triggered by this? Or, you know, I think it even kind of brings in this element of like, even we could talk about like internet culture and why everyone is like so trigger happy, right? Like people can't say anything without someone like going off on it. And I think it's because we're all in this dark passageway. And so we have to remember that, like, so much of what people are saying right now is about them, not you. Like, we are really dealing, like, if we were to, I mean, it's kind of like projection city, right?
Yeah.
And it's tricky to navigate because, you know, you're dealing a lot of the time with people's projections at you from their own dark passageways, but it's triggering your dark passageway. And so it's just like this hall of mirrors. And I think that if I was to describe the nodal placements of 2021 and also part of 2020, but, you know, Gemini Sag, like, is that not the ultimate destined hall of mirrors that we are kind of traversing through at this time? Like, to me, that screams Gemini Sag energy as well, which is what's really like the kind of undercurrent, or what's permeating a lot of these other fixed transits this year. But this is why I fucking love the degrees. I love Elias Long's work. It's why I always include them in my lunar write-up, channelings, write-ups, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Because it hits home, sometimes a bit too hard. Like I said, I'm slightly exposed now. You guys all know where my sun is this lifetime.
Wow. Yeah, that's an amazing degree.
Yeah, and it's anyway. That's enough.
And having Neptune in Pisces whilst we've been traversing these nodes as well, like, there's so much illusion, there's so much disillusion. And even when you were talking about like the hall of mirrors, I mean, that is mutable signs. Like, it's just the hall of mirrors. And and whilst I've sort of played down nodes being in these two signs as lighter and not as heavy as we're, you know, us just about to move into the fixed signs next year, it has really still thrown a very elusive spanner in the works around karma and dharma. Like, it really has. Like, what the north and south nodes stand for is they are heavy, this heavy karmic stuff. And we can see the difference with, you know, I'm talking like, you know, you're talking projections and stuff, and I've written here unhealed traumas. You know, unhealed traumas are just being thrown around. You know, we look at now with these mutable nodes, and, you know, this is all very evolutionary astrology too, right, Katie? Like, when you bring the nodes into anything that you're doing, it brings in this very specific sort of element to the chart, to what's going on and unfolding. Even if, you know, Saturn isn't making an aspect to these nodes, like, it's not about that. It's actually just a layer that we're looking at. And then when we go back to 99, interestingly enough, Katie's talking about like divorce only a couple of weeks later for her in 99. My daughter, I just had a baby a year ago, and it had been in 98. And I was traversing some of the darkest passages of my life, because again, we both experienced with these squares, them hitting our sun, you know, my Mars, my Chiron, you know, and really potent traumatic stuff. And I just said, it's like, you know, so the invitation is go back to 99, have a look at where they were playing out in your chart, because ultimately it's a similar theme that's coming up, but Saturn's just in a different sign this time, and Uranus is, but they've swapped. And what are you revisiting? Because I know for me that some of those things that are being revisited, like, I'm not even shitting you. The other day I was driving and this thing just washed over me, exactly like this feeling. It was just a feeling. And this is even before doing this, because we've literally just done this 20 minutes ago. It was a feeling of when I was 18, because I was 18 at that point. When I was 18, and it just took me straight back there. I was in the car. I just felt like I could smell the same smells. I felt the same as I felt when I was in the relationship with my daughter's father. It was this really weird, uncanny thing. And to see this now, like, you cannot make this shit up. Like, this is just epic. And this is why it's so powerful to look at the cycles of astrology and see what's being revisited this year, because we are in it, especially if you are fixed stuff. Because ultimately, if you're mutable or cardinal, these fixed squares weren't going to be, they're not hitting you the same as they're landing for us.
Yeah. And I think that that's, you know, important to note, you know, because the thing is, like Tiarnie said, astrology is cycles, right? So if your number's not up this time, you know, maybe
it'll be up next time.
Like, you know, for example, like those of you that are heavy in cardinal placements, like, you know, 2018, 2019 was rough for you guys because you had like the Pluto, Saturn, all of that kind of stuff happening via these squares and oppositions. So now it's like fixed signs turn. But also remember, you know, for those of you that are maybe sitting here going, oh my God, I have nothing fixed, you know, maybe I'm not going to watch the rest of this video. Stop, because you can still watch this because you have a fixed house somewhere, right? So you may not have any planets here that have been triggered at this time. Maybe in 2021, your fixed houses might all be empty. I mean, I'm sure there's an asteroid or something in there somewhere, but with the main planets. But remember that you have, these have been activated via transit for you at this time. So, you know, there's still a lot to be taken from this fixed conversation. So for some of you, it's going to be natal and transits. For others of you, it's just going to be transits. And for some of you that are like super professional astrologers, maybe you're having some like progressions into fixed signs right now. But that's probably a bit too deep, but just in case we've got some of those viewers with us. So yeah, but it's just crazy, Tiarnie. Like, I can't believe, like, it's just a bit like, fuck. Like,
yeah, it's a little bit mind blowing.
Right. And like what you just shared with that feeling, it's like, I get it, because it's like these memories are coming back in that kind of way. And I think this is why like the topic of trauma is so important, you know. And I read something the other day that was speaking about like how important it is that any type of therapist needs to be trauma informed, and how that's something that is so lacking. Because I think so often when we go to receive help, how often do we run into people who just aren't able to actually meet or support us in that space? Not because they're not good at their job or a professional in what they do, but simply because as a whole, we are not sort of trained or exposed to being trauma informed. So sometimes through the process of actually healing, we get re-traumatized. I mean, fuck, like, talk about getting re-traumatized, just jump on Instagram or Facebook for a few moments and you can find anything that's going to really piss you off or trigger you or expose something. And I think that we need to be really mindful of like that balance with that, right? You know, and really seeking out the right kind of support. And that may not necessarily look like the kind of support or anything that you were maybe initially seeking, because not everyone is in a space to be able to hold people here. And I think Tiarnie, like both of us being Moon Pluto natives, right? Moon square Pluto. I don't know about you, but I know for me, like if I'm not working with somebody who is not really Plutonian in nature, even if they have nothing to do with astrology, right? Like I need to be working with people who understand that depth, because surface level, like, oh, are you drinking enough water? You know, like get up at the same time every day, you'll feel better. Like, okay, fuck off. Like that doesn't help me with shit with what I'm dealing with. When we look back at like these dates of like I'm being re-traumatized and triggered by my parents' divorce through things that I'm exploring about myself on a personal level now, it's like, yeah, you know, that's not really going to help me right now. So I know that's a kind of a bit of a tangent and a side note, but I think that it's important to touch on, because so many people are amazingly coming to a space of like wanting to explore therapy or move through their anxieties, depression. Like it's becoming so much more talked about, thank God. But that doesn't necessarily mean that all of the information or the people who are necessarily doing this work are the right people for you. And so it's okay to, you know, maybe break up with your therapist or find someone new or these type of things, because if you're holding yourself in a space of re-traumatization by somebody who actually isn't able to hold that space for you, that's why you're getting stuck in these cycles. And fixed sign transits, the very nature of it, I think, is to hold you in that space, ultimately for you to break out. But it's very easy to get stuck in repeating patterns and not realize it. And I think that's a really big theme of this incoming kind of fixed energy, because it's only going to ramp up throughout the decade, right? When we have Pluto moving into Aquarius. I mean, talk about fucking exposing your traumas, right? Like your Aquarius house is about to go off for the next what, 20 something
20 years.
right? So of course, guys, that's then to say, like, you know, we don't feel Pluto transits every day. You know, I think this is something that when we come into astrology, it takes time to kind of recognize or learn. This is like the difference between how a, you know, a transpersonal planet plays out by a transit as opposed to like something personal like, you know, Venus or Mercury. You know, Venus transits, we do feel it. It happens quite quickly. It could be a day, it could be up to a week. But Pluto, if it's in, you know, a house in your chart for 20 years, you know, it's a very long process. So you have to give yourself, I think, that space to move through that. There's no rush with transpersonal transits. It's a lifetime's work, and that's where this evolutionary astrology perspective comes in. And I know I'm jumping around a bit here, guys, but I wanted to touch on something that Tiarnie mentioned about the current nodes. And just to give you guys like a little hot tip when working with evolutionary astrology, is you want to have a look at the ruling planets of the nodes, wherever they're moving at any given time. So the nodes right now are North Node Gemini, South Node Sag. So the main players from these nodes in relation to our collective destiny, our collective healing and release is Mercury and Jupiter. So what you then want to do is like, what's Mercury and Jupiter doing? So Mercury, again, it's a fast moving planet at any given time. So we would only really want to be looking at Mercury when it's coming into the squares and oppositions with the fixed placements. You know, yes, the trine is nice, for example, but it's very quick. It's not on a personal level, it could be felt, but a collective level, not so much. But Jupiter is where? In Aquarius. So I think Jupiter has been, you know, a really, you know, it's been there since what, December 21st last year. Am I right?
Yeah.
So of course it moved into Pisces briefly in May, or did it retrograde in May? Shit. No, it retrograded.
No, I think it moved in May.
Okay, sorry guys, I'm confusing my dates. So I want to kind of like, what's your opinion? Because I'm feeling I'm tangenting, so I want to reel it back in. Tiarnie, what do you kind of feel like with Jupiter moving through Aquarius and activating these points with Uranus and Saturn? Because being the ruler of the South Node in Sag, I think that this Jupiter Saturn, we can see how it's really tying into what we are actually shifting in perspective of letting go and releasing, as opposed to bringing in with Mercury and Gemini. Like, can you kind of see that? Or
yeah, and it's just all, you know, and it's amplifying it, and it's you know, the whole getting out of control thing, you know, like that's the thing, you know, like it's really all getting out of control, which Jupiter does. I mean, since Jupiter retrograded back into Aquarius, pretty much fuck off now. Like I'm in the fuck off mode of Jupiter in Aquarius. I just want Jupiter to just move on now, darling, move on, because that reactivation in that retrograde has really shifted things big time. You know, it was actually great when Jupiter moved into Pisces. You know, there was, especially when he was direct. So when it comes to the nodal stuff, you know, we talked before we jumped on here too, you know, there's this real element of discernment. And I think with Mercury ruling the North Node, like, what are we all doing? We're all talking. Like, it's just communication constantly. But Mercury's logical, Mercury's intelligent, Mercury's discerning. But then there's this, what we're letting go of is this polarity of this Jupiterian over-exaggerated, to me, like, I'm not trying to dismiss what's going on in the world collectively, but it's about moving on, like, especially when we're birthing something new, like we're in the canal, we're in the contraction of it, but there's so much holding on. You know, one of my clients, she said, it's like I'm walking through Mordor, and I was just like, oh my God. But I mean, she's having like heavy ass Pluto transits in her chart. But it's just interesting. You know, it's an interesting, you know, it's interesting definitely to, you know, be looking at what those nodes are doing at any given time.
Because you're right, you know, like, you know, Mercury is, you know, logic, intelligence.
It is.
It's,
and as much as maybe it gets fluffed over, like Mercury gets fluffed over, do not get me wrong, Gemini, Mercury, total fluff. But the thing is it's practical, it's intelligence, it's emotional intelligence, it's logical, it's using your brain. But we're so in this Jupiterian, Neptunian, Sagittarian, oh, guru, oh, if I just, wake up at the same time every morning, that will heal everything. I need a routine. I just need to do this. I need to hustle. I need to blah. I need to make more money. I need to do this. There's this expansive gold nugget that's being dangled that people are still going after, when really Mercury is going, use your brain, use your common sense, use your mind, be discerning, be rational. The overreactivity to me is Jupiter. But then when we can respond, we can come from a place of Mercury, responsive.
Completely, because, Jupiter in Sag is hubris. It's like, okay, you have all this knowledge, or you're so spiritual, or you're so this or that, but like, what the fuck are you doing with it? Are you using it as like a way to, just garner like personal profit in this like kind of hustle culture and all of this stuff? Because we need to remember that Uranus is moving through Taurus. So, this is revolutionizing, of course, how we work with money, our values, anything of like a very kind of physical, sensual, practical nature. But I think that like like one of the main things you'll always see astrologers talking about with Uranus and Taurus is, of course, Bitcoin, right? Which has the potential to be something very cool, but it's also currently, also fucking a lot of shit up, in the sense of like, we always kind of joke about like MLMs and stuff, like women in their whatever they're flogging, their shampoos and stuff like that. But and I don't want to just say that this is men only, it can be both. But I feel like the kind of MLMs for dudes is Bitcoin. Like, join my Bitcoin.
So is.
And
all the crypto.
Completely, right? So like crypto is like the new, and like casino gaming and stuff like that. Like, I was watching this video the other day, like, because I love to watch these kind of like exposing this hustle culture shit and whatever. And the one that I was watching was talking about how there's like literal like Twitch live streams of like just bros that play gambling. They get paid like $1 million a month by casinos to like watch gambling, and they give these codes like, come play this and, use my code. But that's how they're making their $1 million. Like, you signing up and playing these gambling games or these Bitcoin crypto things are only lining their pockets and are set up for you to lose. And so you're like subscribing to this hustle culture, like, I'm going to have this big house and all of this car and all of this money and all of this shit, but you're literally giving your power away to somebody who is like mining you for their own profit. And to me, that's like totally so Jupiter, so Uranus moving through Taurus, So with Saturn moving through Taurus in 99, like most of those people, they're too young. They weren't even born probably, right? In 99, like some of the, like Gen Z and stuff like that are like much younger. They were born in the 2000s, but like this signature is actually stemming back from then, which, we can see that they've come in after this kind of signature was again activated, right? So don't be a victim of hustle culture, whether that's in the field of, crypto, or whether it's the next spiritual guru that's trying to convince you to, I don't know what, sign up to their fucking whatever, and all you're doing is lining their pockets, like,
with exactly. And with Uranus in Taurus, it is about revolutionizing your values. And what is of value? I mean, that's the biggest thing, is like, it's about the value. And I've got my natal Uranus in Scorpio in my second house, and with a stellium in Taurus, I'm all about value. So when people go, oh, come and work with me for $5,000 for 3 months, I'm like, no, like, or $20,000 for a 6-month container. That's like some people's nearly whole wage. And I see the back end of this, where people are feeling bullied by young white hustling women getting in on this thing, like, come and work with me in these containers, because I'll do all the shiny things. I'll blow wind up your ass 4 times a week, and it'll look good on my video because I'm shiny and new. But these women are struggling, like they're struggling. They're like, oh my God, like I can't pay my bills now. I've committed to a $20,000 thing that's 6 months. It's half a year, $20,000. Like, I mean, I talked to Joel, my husband, and he's just like, he reintroduced the word charlatan to me a couple of years ago, which was very right. But he's just like, this is a uni degree. Like people go to uni and do a whole year at uni and it's $20,000. And they've actually, it's just this very interesting change that's coming around in this forum, which I think that, we could do a whole separate thing on and talk about that for 68 years realistically. But I think it can tie into what's going on with Jupiter expanding everything. Uranus is in this sign of reevaluating and revolutionizing your value system and what your desires are and what your priorities are. Like what's really a priority to you? What is actually going to give you value in your life moving forward? I mean, they're the questions I want to ask people. And that's that very heavy, that's what we're going through with this underpinning square, is we're changing our values. We're changing our value systems from the Saturn, patriarchy, success, hustle, get to the top tier of your level, because I'm a diamond. You're not a diamond. You're going to a diamond party, which means nothing. I could have a diamond party in my bedroom right now and I'm a hero. No, you're not. But it's a great way of really making everything shiny. So actually, that's Saturn. That's not New Age. That's Saturn. That's the old patriarchy sucking you in to go money, money, status. And then Uranus is going, hey, let's change this. Like, let's change this and let's reinvent this. Like we've got to get out of the box, and that's what's really happening. We're breaking free. We're in a birth canal right now, and it is dark and it is Mordor and it is contracting. It is all of those things, but trust and connection and common sense and work with this south node of leaving, walking away from those old karmic ways. Jupiter gives us the insight and belief that we can as well work with Jupiter in that positive way as well,
Completely, I just think that what can make it tricky is, Uranus isn't happy in Taurus. So I think this is because like it's very easy to say, Uranus is here to revolutionize and change and all of these things, and absolutely. But I think where a lot of people are coming unstuck is like Uranus is in Taurus. It's like where it's like a slow burn, and Uranus isn't a slow burn. And so it's becoming very contradictory in of itself. Plus,
yes, absolutely.
When you put in a Saturn square, then that's like the ultimate contradiction, right? Because at least if it's an opposition, you can find that balance. But a square, it's just pure friction. It's pure charged energy. And so it can be very difficult to discern how to make really the right choices for yourself. Are your choices aligned with your values? And to make that personal, then of course you want to look at your Taurus house and your Aquarius house to see where these channels are playing out, because that could be, these values may be coming through relationships if they're more of the relationship houses. It could be, of course, exacerbating this kind of career, finance, money sort of aspect if it's those houses. It could be a very spiritual experience for you if it's coming into the 12th house or even the 8th house. So it's really important to know your chart. Don't just rely on Instagram posts that are talking about like full moon manifestation time, because it doesn't mean shit if you don't know where these placements are happening in your own chart. Like that's how you make it personal. That's how you navigate this. Like, yes, the collective astrology, the evolutionary astrology, very important. I mean, that's mostly like what I love to do and what I focus on myself. But then I've taught myself the skills to know how to apply that for myself, as has Tiarnie, as all astrologers do. And that's what we're here to help you with. We're here to help you make it personal, because I think there's so much of an abundance of information out there that isn't personal. So people get lost, just because an astrologer is talking about relationships in general, that may not be stimulating your relationship house. So yes, the overarching theme can be that, but if you don't know where that's hitting you, it's
all just white noise. Like it's all white noise and you're just jumping on a bandwagon.
Completely, because, astrology is interpretive. So you need to learn how to interpret it for you, find your own language, find your own systems and processes. I mean, that's Saturn, right? Like, that's using Saturn to your advantage. Use that Aquarius house to put in processes to support these changing values that are coming in through that Taurus house, or that whatever placements it's touching. And again, if you have fixed planets natally, this is all going to be exacerbated, because it's going to be then like, well, okay, your moon's here, so it's going to be an emotional experience for you. And oh, it's touching your Pluto, oh my god, fucking ultimate transformation. Oh, it's your Mercury too, like how are you thinking and perceiving things? Like, this is why we kind of wanted to do this video, because as we said, like, we're both living it. Like, what, I mean, for you, Tiarnie, like, what are your fixed planets? Like, what do you have in fixed sign?
So Mars in Taurus, Chiron and Sun in Taurus, Venus in Taurus, Uranus in Scorpio, and my nodes are Leo, Aquarius.
So a shit ton.
Yeah.
So yeah, and everything and whatever's happening, and I know for you some of those degrees are later. So like for you, it's only just beginning, right? Like it's starting to come in. Like for me, I've got Moon in Leo, Sun in Aquarius, Mercury in Aquarius, Pluto in Scorpio, and an empty Taurus house. So, for me, like, Uranus is stimulating like this third house, but it's empty for me. So it's like, it gives a bit more room to move, right? But for you, Uranus is like coming up and bumping heads with, what did you say? Like your Venus, your Chiron, your Sun, your Mars. Oh my God, so for you, like the Uranian energy is super stimulating for you, where like Saturn is hitting like my Sun, my Moon, and my Pluto all at once. So I'm kind of being like Saturnized, where you're being like, I don't know, Uranized? I don't know, I'm making up words, but you get the gist, right?
Yeah. One of my clients said, her grandma was an astrologer. She said, Saturn transits, it feels like you're being sat on. I'm like, touche. I like that.
So that's why I just work from bed every day, right? Because I'm just back and being sat on by Saturn.
You're being sat on by Saturn. And this is, we talked a lot about lots of stuff, as we always do, because that's just what we do, because this is a cosmic conversation, darlings. But getting into these fixed signs for you to also look at your chart, like Katie said, firstly, you do want to find your Aquarius and Taurus houses, and then understand the archetypes of Uranus and Taurus, and Uranus and Saturn. And then if you do want to go back to 99, flip them around, because the opposite was in that house. So what was going on there? Where were you feeling restricted but wanting the freedom? Just basic keywords sometimes can help you to understand the feel of the planet. But at the moment, if you have any planets from 14 to 8 degrees of fixed signs, so the fixed signs are Leo, Aquarius, Scorpio, and Taurus, just so that everyone knows. If you've got any planets there, this is where the retrogrades are happening. Uranus is retrograde at 14 degrees. Saturn is retrograde. He is retrograde now, and he will retrograde back to 8 degrees. So they're both in this little container where Uranus is trying to expand. And I know I use those words very much around Uranus, the great awakener, liberator, and expander. And you know what? As an astrologer, and when you embody planets as well, and when you embody astrology, like we were talking about, it's, interpreting, but it's experiential. Like, you've got to experience your chart by activating it and living it, not just reading some books and going, oh, this is transiting this. And what does that mean for you? How are you living that experience? I'm going to be the first to put my hand up, even when planets are in detriment, fall, whatever. I like Uranus in Taurus, and I think that it's because I have a stellium in Taurus. And so I think that it's stimulating me in a really great way. And whilst I know he is in detriment, I'm going to be having my Uranus opposition. When he's in Taurus, he gets my Uranus in Scorpio right at the same time as it hits my Venus. So this is going to be a very powerful Uranus opposition for me. And if you are between 42 to 44, it's what society deems as midlife crisis, but it's actually your Uranus opposition. So Uranus is wanting to break free, but Saturn's restricting. So if you've got charts like ours and you do have planets at each of these different degrees and all of the fixed signs, so whatever it could be that you're a Leo sun, it could be that you're got an Aquarius moon, like check out the degree 14 to 8 at this point, and you've got revolutionizing, awakening, yes, slow to burn, but I think that maybe that's why a Taurus likes it. Like for me, I know a lot of Taurians who are loving, like they're going through great revolution, but I think we are such a slow to burn sign, so it sort of works for us that it's not just this like amped up, holy motherfucking shit, we're changing in 5 seconds. Like it's like, oh, I can feel it, I feel electric, oh, things are coming. Like it's really, it's like it's momentum is how I want to say it. Uranus in Taurus feels like momentum. It's not just when Uranus ingressed into Aries and Fukushima happened, which is what happened at 00 Aries. Like that just happened, bam. Like this is like, it's the slow burn. We're going to really see the effects in 5 more years or 4 more years when he comes out and go, oh my God, look at what's happened then, because it was like a steamroller in a way. But whilst Uranus is expanding or revolutionizing or making change or liberating planets that he's hitting, Saturn's there restricting the fuck out of them, pulling them back, feeling heavy, feeling inhibited. Maybe it's depression, especially a sun Saturn. If you do have a Aquarius sun, like that's an intense, like that's a once in a 30-year transit. And that's where I'm the same with going back to, like when Saturn hits someone's Venus and they're in their 50s, I'm like, let's go back 30 years. What did you believe about relationships and money back then? Because that's what's coming up again. And that's where we do have to sort of look, Katie's the queen of it, but also we do have to look back and go, okay, well, what was happening? I'll go, it was 30 years, it was 28 years, it was 12 years, whatever. But you want to go back and have a look at that. What was being active? Like what was alive for you then? What did your parents teach you about relationships? Because you might only be 30. And so, or 40, and 30 years ago you were 10. So what's going on there? So while Saturn is restricting and Uranus is expanding, of course, that's lockerheads, so whatever planets those two are banging up against, it's like a pressure cooker. It's like combustion. It's big. It's really big.
And that's why this year is so like amplified, because really when you think about it, most of the shit that we're dealing with this year stems from last year, right? Like, that's when these kind of big changes kind of came in. But now we're dealing, and this is kind of like what Tiarnie said to me earlier, we were just talking about this energy of like, the nodes are stimulating us to like move on. But there's the fixed energy is, the Saturn fixed perspective is like staying stuck. And so I think that this year, this is where people are getting super exhausted, right? It's kind of like, lockdown fatigue and things like that. Like it's a real thing, lockdown anxiety, lockdown this and that. And it makes people, it can create this energy of like wanting to give up, or it's too hard, or, but we're so close to like, we have the last square of this in December. And it's really going to shift the energy so much next year. I'm not saying everything's going to be miraculously different, or, there's still going to be things to be worked through. But the intensity of this square will wrap up, like, of all days, Christmas. Great. So get ready for epic Christmas.
Yeah, let's just all go away from everyone on Christmas Day and just have our own little go into a hotel.
Totally. Solo Christmas. Like
solos.
Because I think the last few years, like there's been epic, like last year it was like the Saturn Jupiter conjunction was a couple of days before Christmas. And then I remember the year before that we had a Cancer full moon on eclipse on Christmas Eve. It was just fantastic. Anyway.
Yeah, it was crazy.
But yeah, so this energy is going to be, we're in the retrograde phase of it now. So the retrograde phase allows you to kind of like, okay, the charge is less amplified, it's more reflective. And so this is a time to really start to kind of assess, like, okay, like the last like 6 to 8 months has been like a fucking whirlwind. But through this whirlwind, you've probably felt like you've not done a lot, right? Because it's like, normally if we think of this whirlwind energy, we're out living our normal lives, we're free, we're able to do this, we're just we're just living, right? But now
we're kicking goals.
Yeah, but now we're like in this whirlwind energy, but we're like in four walls. And so for a lot of people, that's a very different, strange experience. You know, for some of us who like love to be at home, different,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But for a lot of people, it's the levels of frustration and confusion have been so amped up and amplified. That's the same thing anyway. You know what I mean? So now is a time to like be really reflective on that, because it's going to be kicking in again in December once more. But these kind of transits we normally feel for about a week to 2 weeks because they're more slow moving. So really like the end of 2021 is kind of going to be the culmination of this kind of swinging point and this friction between, you know, past and future, and like, you know, where do you fit in? And of course the midpoint for that has to be the present, right? So the more that you're thinking about like what has happened, the more distracted you become. The more you're freaking out about what's to come, the more off path and distracted you are. You know, the middle path is the way. And I don't mean the middle path in like sitting back and, you know, like letting the world pass you by. I don't mean in that way. Like obviously there's things that we need to be vocal about and you know, still partaking in the world in whatever way we can fit in with that. But if you're on a personal level getting too, you know, because what does the future do, right? The future just creates anxiety, right? And the past often will create, you know, there's a better word than depression, but you know, we tend to ruminate, right? We don't want to be ruminating. Like that's holding you in a space of apathy, of heaviness, of overthinking. And then the future is triggering like anxiety and, oh my God, this could happen or that could happen. And it's like, well, fuck, anything can happen at any time, any place, right? There are many uncontrollables in life. That is the very nature of life, is like the uncontrollable, and taking, you know, partaking in the opportunities that uncontrollability brings you. And sometimes these are really beautiful, amazing things, and at other times it's like really hard experiences. And by learning your chart, you can track, it's like your own kind of calendar of these cycles. Because like Tiarnie and I said, like if you have fixed planets, yeah, your number's kind of up right now. But those of you that maybe had a lot of cardinal, like you guys really went through it the past couple of years. So maybe this time for you is like a bit of a reprieve, right? Where those of us with fixed planets are like, oh, okay, this is what it's like. And yeah, it's bringing up shit from like 20 fucking years ago. And if you're old enough to have had an experience 20 years ago, go back and think about your life at this time. Even if you don't have planets there, you still have these houses being activated by transits. It's big, and it's all in preparation for Pluto in, I nearly said Scorpio, Pluto in Aquarius in 2023, you know. The Aquarian signature is just beginning, you know, and this is going to be a real activated hotspot for you. Like even think back to February, we had that 7-planet stellium in Aquarius. That kind of set the tone, right, for a lot of what has kind of come for the rest of this year for you, again on that personal level. So look at these places in your chart, and of course Leo, Scorpio as well by opposition and square. But yeah, my God, it's a lot. I'm gonna breathe, have a sip of water.
And I think that as a, you know, with heavy fixed signs, I want to just share, look, if you are feeling, and I did do a live months ago about the same thing, like, what have I done this year? Like, I'm like, what have I even achieved? Like, I haven't even done anything. I feel like I've done nothing. So this was early in the year, and I just had so many people going, oh my God, that's exactly how I feel. And a lot of them, again, I was talking a little bit about the fix, you know, oh, I'm a Leo sun, I'm a this, I'm a that, because of everything that Katie's just said, because it's so different. We're living in such a different reality that, and with this fixed energy, which is sometimes complacent, sometimes stuck, like there's change happening, but it can be sort of like moving forward with the brakes on. It's that whole 3 steps forward, 4 steps back, 6 steps forward, 4 steps back. Like, and it really is this toing and froing. And within that, there has to be that sweet surrender as well, you know, and I think that that's being in the present, you know, like being here now. And I mean, I shared something on my Instagram page the other day that I don't feel guilty about not having fear, because I don't, because I trust astrology too much and I trust the universe too much. So everything that I'm experiencing, it doesn't come from fear. Like, I'm a human and I'll still have human moments, but there's no fear that resides. And if fear does come up from time to time in humanness, I meet that fear. I set a table for it. I set a place for it at the table, and I meet that fear and I go, okay, where is this? What's going on here? Because fear and trust are both, they can't happen simultaneously, but we can't, like, I remember one of my teachers going, oh, those people that say they're fearless, they've got no fear. He goes, that's weird and that's crazy, because if you're being attacked for it by a shark, you should have fear. And I'm like, exactly. So it's not to say or to dismiss fear. That's not what I'm doing. It's not about dismissing fear, but when fear runs you, when fear drives your life and drives all of your decisions, that's coming from a really lacking place. And it's not of love, and it's not coming out of alignment and trust in the universe. And when you do have I've got Jupiter in the 12th house. So I just have this just innate trust. I just trust the universe before I trust anything else. And I think unless you've got Jupiter in the 12th house, it is a really tricky one to explain, because it's just a feeling. It's just like, you know, that claircognitance, just knowing stuff. Like, I just know. I just know. I just know. But at the same time, you know, like I said, my chart's still being fucked up the ass, like on a human level, you know, and I am, and I'm taking it. Like, I'm literally bent over and I'm taking it, and it's okay, because I trust in what's to come and I have faith. And but I want to, you know, really just gently say that if you do have a lot of fixed placements, like, it's okay. Like, it's okay. I just want to say it's okay. Whatever you're feeling, if it is that it's bed that day, that's okay. And if it's that you're productive one day, that's okay. And if it's productive for 1 hour and you tick one thing off and then you're like, I'm done for the day, that's okay. Because I think with fixed signs too, there's such, you know, there's a little bit of a workhorse, sort of like, we just keep going and keep doing the things, but we're really, our template and our DNA template is shifting a lot with Uranus and Saturn, and we're restructuring our own energetic infrastructure. Like, that's what we're doing. We're rebuilding, and it takes time, and it's not just going to all be done. So I think that it's important for us to sometimes just relax and be okay with not being okay. Relax, be okay with not getting something done, not forcing, not pushing, not being fixed and like, I'm being fixed and rigid about this. It's just like, no, because Saturn is, the delay is the way, the obstacle is the path. So when Saturn's slowing you down and actually putting the brakes on, and he's creating the karma or the obstacle or time, we're dealing with time, you know, Saturn's time, he's the time lord. So we're dealing with time. So if he's slowing something down, we have to have faith in that. We have to trust that. You know, instead of pushing, forcing, being stubborn and go, no, it must be done. It's like, no, actually. And that's something that I've really, you know, I had very different expectations around all of this stuff, to be honest. I thought it was going to bring up like anger and all this sort of stuff, because Uranus has been hitting my Mars, Saturn squaring my Mars at the same time. Next year, Uranus hits my Sun, Saturn squares my Sun. So everything Uranus hits for me, Saturn squaring it at the same time. So it's this real excitement, but with the brakes on, you know, because Saturn wants you to succeed, but he wants you to have a strong foundation. So we really are anchoring into something new. And I think that when we can trust that, we can move through this little piece in our lives and come out much more wise.
Completely. Like, I love what you said, like, the delay is the way. Because how often in life, right, do we look back when we're like pushing for something that we really want and we don't get it, and in the moment we're like, fuck my life, right? And then a few months later, what we wanted comes in a different way, and then we look back and we're like, thank God that didn't happen to me, right? And so I think that that's kind of what is happening here this year a lot, is that, you know, the delay is the way. There's a reason why things are like taking their time, or like there's a lot of like background happenings.
Yes.
And I think that then the frustration can be is like coming back to that Uranus energy is like, because Uranus is normally super stimulating, like the way that Uranus works is, you know, it'll blow something up and then everything, the pieces fall down to be rebuilt. But like, because that process is happening a little slower in Taurus, I think that's then where the frustration is coming from. Like, I agree with what you're saying, like with all of the planets you have in Taurus, that it's actually like feeling good, right? Because Taurus needs a little bit of a push, right? So if you have Taurus planets, like it's probably not feeling as like maybe aggressive or fear-based as like a textbook will tell you, right? Because like we said, astrology is experiential. Like you need to be like, how is it feeling for you? And that's going to be different for every individual. Astrology can give you the framework, but ultimately, you know, if you have like, it's always going to be about like, if you have another square or a trine or something else happening for you personally, it's going to feel completely different to the next person who has a similar placement. But I think that the frustration with the swinging between like this desire to push forward and pioneer and create something new, that it's been slowed down through this like delay is the way. That's really kind of just like, that's just 2021 in a nutshell. And I think that like we just have to ride it out. And like, it's not about then just, you know, because it's easy to say like, live in the present, like, okay, cool, like I'm trying, but you know, but that's all you can do, right? And you're gonna have moments where you're in fear, because fear is a natural response. Like, yes, you can learn techniques to choose a path of consciously moving out of that fear, right? But that doesn't mean you're still not going to feel it. It's just about having the tools to know how to work through it and move through it and create a different experience for yourself. Because, you know, Neptune in Pisces is like the ultimate victim. And so I think what is also happening here is like, it's much easier to just be the victim instead of taking responsibility for your own feelings, perspectives, reactions, etc. Like, and I think that's again creating this whole element, you know, out there in the world where like it's easier to just blame someone else, blame the government, blame this person, blame that, whatever, instead of just taking responsibility for your own lane and just do what you can to
and also
like,
and just on that too, like the thing is that crisis just brings out what's been suppressed anyway.
Yeah.
So if you're suppressing anger, fear, whatever that is, like Wayne Dyer says, when you squeeze an orange juice, what comes out? Like when you squeeze an orange, what comes out? Orange juice, right? So when life squeezes you, what comes out? So everyone's unique and individual reactions to what's going on is exactly that. When you are squeezed with a crisis, it really reveals who you are on some level. And for some people, this is very overwhelming. And that is not to discount that it is very overwhelming for some people. I know, hello, like it is very, very big. It's scary. The unknown is scary to a lot of people, but for some people it's not. And the thing is that this is something that I've been saying for years. There's no more carpets and rugs to be pushing your shit under. And that's why so much stuff is coming out. So if you've done a hell of a lot of work, that rug was lifted for you maybe 20 years ago. So you've come to this space and there is peace and there is calm and there is clarity and there isn't fear, and that's okay. So you don't have to jump on the bandwagon of things either. It's like there's no more rugs to push your stuff under. So a lot of revelations are happening. Like this is a big thing that's going on astrologically, is the revelations, like revealing yourself to yourself, how you are in a crisis. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. You could be a 90% awesome, 10% not. You could be 90% not great and 10% good. None of them are right or wrong, but what they need is honesty. What they need is reflection. What they need is to honestly be honest with yourself and with what's going on. And, you know, I don't know how some people are going to live for these next few years, to be completely honest. Like I don't. Unaware, people that have done no work, they're just everything, their whole life is underneath the rug. Like, because they might not know the rug's gone, but the rug's gone. So they're still pushing, but the rug's actually not there anymore. So, you know, I've said that 2023 is probably 2021 on steroids, and I'm talking numerologically as well. Like where next year I've done all of everything for 2022 in my energy survival kit. So I've really sort of lived that. And it is different, it is a very different feel on quite a few levels than this year. It's not saying that there's not going to be a lot of still unpredictability in things, but 2023, and 2024 and 2025 and 2026, it's just like, that's what I'm looking at. And I'm just like, whoa, like I've done with 2022. I actually want to prepare everyone for 2023 and beyond, because this is, if we're being shut down to face our demons and face our shadows, and we're still suppressing and running and hiding, well, they're gonna, Lilith is on the rise, not the fucking embodied instinctual Lilith either, the screeching Lilith. Like, she is here, she is rampant. Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's here for a lot of people in very different ways, and in the exploration of who she is within our own, like, deep repressed, suppressed feminine. So much is shifting, and I just wanted to say that too, because everyone deals with things differently, but but none of them are right or wrong. Like, that's the thing, and we can only share with how we experience life, and then we can only hope that anchors in something like hope or connection or acceptance for the other person as well, because you can be best friends and your best friend's depressed and you're not. Does that make anyone right or wrong? Hell no. Like, that makes us a team, that makes us connected, that makes us come together, so compassion and kindness and love will outdo any of the stuff that's going on right now. Love conquers all karma. Thank you very much, Liz Green. Love conquers all karma.
Yeah, absolutely. And it will. I'm just a big believer in these nodes right now. This is what's creating so much of this divisive energy and the chaos, is because people are far too stuck in the south node of I'm a guru, or I'm right, or my beliefs are the only way. And yes, people deal with things in their own way, and I think that we need to have compassion for them for that and not attack. And this is where that that north node Mercury comes in, and it's like everyone's just screaming I'm right, but everyone's right for themselves, but that doesn't mean that we can't hold space for another. Like, what happened to just the art of debate? Like, just because someone has a different perspective or opinion than you doesn't mean that you can't be friends, right? It's like the example you gave, if your friend is depressed, that doesn't mean that you are, but that means you can still be a team and be together. And I think that is what has just become so noisy out in the world, is this opposition between this energy of because we're supposed to be letting go. These triggers are for a reason, because it's helping you face what are my beliefs, what are my values, Uranus in Taurus. It's important to be questioning these things. It's okay to stay and choose some things, yes, upon reflection, that is my belief and I'm going to stand by that. But that doesn't stop me from using my fucking logic or my intelligence to be able to understand that may not be truth for somebody else, and that's okay. Just not everyone's against you, and I think
that's the Gemini invitation. Discernment.
Exactly. And I think that it's very easy through a curated feed on your screen to only see echo chambers. The more you watch certain types of things, the more that's going to be played back to you. And I think that people are getting very lost. And I guess this is just, at least for me, to say to you guys, don't, you have the power to not allow that to happen. You're not a victim to your circumstance. You're not a victim to your Instagram feed or your fucking TikTok, whatever. You can, yes, these are programmed to reflect things back to you. And ultimately social media is just showing you yourself, because the more you interact with it, the more it's going to show you what you're interacting with, but it's going to take you on deeper rabbit holes, right? So it's excuse me, yes, that can be shocking, right? Oh my God, I'm seeing all of this stuff, but it's where am I engaging with that? Where can I consciously choose to engage with that less? Where can I make more informed decisions? Where can I, whatever, right? But don't fall into that Neptunian victimhood of I'm a victim to what the world is showing me, because you are engaging in the world in that way, or you are connecting with individuals with perspectives that perhaps aren't aligned with your own, but you're just going along with it, right? So yeah, that's just food for thought. There's no right or wrong either. Like, you may listen to everything I just said and go, that's not for me. And you know what?
Yeah. And that's okay.
Okay, I'm not the guru.
Yeah.
I'm not sitting here like the big boss of this year telling you like what you have to do or don't do. I'm just giving you like my reflection and my perspective on it. You know, I have a lot of 12th house placements, so I'm always going to be the observer. But that doesn't mean my observations are correct for you. It may be correct for people who hear this and go, yeah, right on. And then you may go, nah, that's not for me. Totally fine, right? Like, again, this isn't to create more division. This isn't to, I'm not saying this to piss people off or whatever, right? And if it's triggering you or pissing you off, sit with that, right? Like, don't come to me. Don't come saying shit to me, because you know what? I don't care. Like, you do you and I'll do me, and we can both respect each other enough to not have to put each other down over whatever we may be exploring, experiencing, sharing, and rant, okay?
I think I have a quote in my book that says, if it's not true, it doesn't trigger.
Yeah.
That's just the sentence. And, you know, people are, oh, triggers are trigger. Everyone's trigger happy. Trigger. Your trigger is my trigger. Trigger. And I'm like, but if it's not true, it doesn't trigger. So if it's not true for you, it can't trigger you. Exactly. And then if something sort of moves for you, then, you know, and the more true you are to yourself. And this is where, when the North Node moves into Taurus next year, which I'm so fucking excited about, this is all about inner resources. You know, this is being, and again, the South Node in Scorpio, drama, other people's stories, other people's trauma, other people's drama, you know, connecting into all of that. Like, we're moving away from that. We're moving to self-sovereignty and being resourceful and relying on ourselves. So it's similar to what you were saying when we look at the nodes, you know, like when we look at where the nodes are moving into these fixed placements of Taurus and Scorpio next year. So it's exciting. And the fixed planets, again, like, you know, another big slamming and ass whipping, because now the nodes are there.
Yeah, right. But I think that's exactly it. It's like, you know, the South Node in Scorpio is going to be like other people's stuff. So the more you can allow this North Node in Gemini to maybe help you, like, let's go back to what I said at the very beginning, right? About being just more trauma informed, about understanding, like, we've all gone through trauma, and that oftentimes people are reacting from a space that isn't them now. And so they're not trying to trigger you on purpose because, oh my God, guess what? You're the victim again, right? It's just that we're all fucking like traumatized and wounded, but we need to rely more on, like, what have we learned with the North Node in Gemini giving us this information, right? Because we're like in this amazing space of like, whatever you want to know, you can find it, right? But with the node moving into Taurus, it's like, okay, now you're armed with all of this information. What are you going to do with it? Taurus is the first sign of the earth. It's like getting in touch with yourself and your own inner resources and your values. So if you were going to be in the South Node of Scorpio for the next 2 years of like getting so wrapped up in all these triggers still, but not actually like being resourceful with them, channeling them into your art, channeling them into your, like your, I don't know, into even like your recipes and like cooking and being part of like the home environment and like, you know, sensuality and, you know, like, again, just this word of resourcefulness, like channel it into things that bring you comfort. Like, it's okay with the North Node in Taurus to find ways of being comfortable. You don't have to stay in this space of like this kind of like perpetual wheel of like triggers, right? Like that can illuminate, which is great. Oh my God, this happened to me and it fucking hurt me. And oh my God, like it makes so much sense why my life has been this way. But the North Node in Taurus is an invitation to find tools and people and experiences to nurture you and support you and like give you resources to heal that, instead of staying in that sort of South Node of like, well, you know, or the or Neptune in Pisces, which is always going to be stimulating until 2026, this victim mentality, right? Like, and I'm not saying that you can't like reflect on like actually where you have been victimized, right? I'm not blaming the victim here. That's not what I'm trying to say at all. It's just that ultimately the process of moving through these triggers and maybe these perspectives of these traumas are helping you see where you were a victim and where you can now, with the North Node in Taurus, empower yourself, use these resources and these tools to change your life. But Taurus is like, you have to take that responsibility for yourself. There's no one else that can do that for you. You know, if you're relying on something external, that's going to hold you back. I don't know, does that make sense? I feel like I kind of went in a few circles with that.
No, it does. Like, I mean, I think the Taurus and Scorpio nodal axis, I always sort of say, is that you don't need drama to evolve. Like, you don't have to have these traumas and I'm constantly processing. Like, you do not have to constantly be processing. If you're constantly in process, where is the joy? Where is living? Where is embodying the trauma and actually working with it and moving forward? And you know, you get someone like me who is very pragmatic and very practical and is very inner resourceful, because I do have a stellium in Taurus and I know myself and I'm excited about this. I'm more excited about this fixed nodal than I have been about the mutable one, to be honest. But I'm really excited about this transit. It's going to be amazing.
It is, because I think that, you know, it's easy to, you know, and this is the thing too, right? Like, whenever people just think of Scorpio, it's instant panic, right? Like, because it's just like, oh my God, it's the dark side, right? And oh my God, we've already been in this dark passageway with the Scorpions, right? Like, that was the name of the degree of where we are now. But, you know, oh, I just lost my point. No, don't do that. My brain, why is it like this?
Because Mercury is opposite Neptune. I think we've done very well, to be honest.
That's pretty good.
Yes, Mercury. No, you were saying that, like, when anyone thinks about Scorpio, they think of like all the bad things.
Completely. And that's going to, thank you. And that's going to be exacerbated when it's the South Node, right? Because
absolutely,
that's what we want to release. So, like, whatever your own underworld is at this time, it's going to be even more seen, right? But it's being more seen in order to heal, not to put you in this space of panic or, oh my God, like, I'm never going to escape this, or my life is this or that or whatever. It's like, it's bringing you back into a space of maybe a repeated pattern, but we come back into these repeated patterns in order to, you know, hopefully we come back into a repeated pattern with more insight, tools, knowledge, wisdom, understanding, age, right? Like,
well, the concentric circles, you know, it's a constant circle. It's constantly circling. It's a labyrinth. It's not a maze. We're walking a labyrinth of life, and a labyrinth is very different to a maze. If you're in a maze, you're constantly block, stop, back all the way. Block, stop. And some people live mazes, but when you're living a labyrinth, it's alignment. There's constant moving. And yeah, you retrace steps, you do all those things, but with different clarity, with different wisdom.
Exactly. And that's, I think, a really great
different tools. So yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's a great way of describing the South Node. Like, I think we're having like jumping internet issues.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
You know, I think that the South Node, like, that can trigger in a lot of people just in general. When we start to again learn about astrology, we go, okay, well, the South Node is what I shouldn't be doing, but that's not true. I say it's more nuanced than that, because like, yes, if you're getting stuck in the South Node, then you are limiting yourself. But if you were able to think about when was the last time that either the North Node or the South Node was here, so you want to look at 9 years ago, 18 years ago, and like, okay, what have, you know, like, Scorpio is like the alchemist. Like, so what have I alchemized? Like, what have I actually transcended? Yes, the South Node is maybe bringing me back to a reflection point on this, but reflecting on something does not mean that I am necessarily reliving it. I'm only seeing it from a new perspective. That's how you want to work with this energy, not throw yourself down into the depths of like, trauma, woe is me, like all that kind of stuff. Like, that may come up, but it's like astrology can help give you that tool to be like, oh, I'm going into this a bit, aren't I? Okay, well, how can I come back into the North Node? And so you want to be looking at Taurus. The node is going to conjunct Uranus. Like,
it's amazing.
that's not going to be until maybe 2023. I don't know. That's my dates with that. I'm not super on point with, but
no, I think it happens next year. I've got it in my 2022 kit. I'm pretty sure I did write that it happens next year. Yeah.
The end of the year, because it moves, the nodes move in January, I think. So
yeah.
So yeah, it'll be about the midpoint towards this time next year kind of thing, maybe a bit later. But yeah, how are you feeling? We've talked about a lot.
We have. It's been a big session, a
Yeah.
really big session, but I think that it's been like fulfilling, it's been fulfilling to just chat about this stuff and to have this conversation just go in whatever direction it needs to, because I think that we needed to cover lots of different things and not be fixed in the way that we came into this and just have it to be one thing. So we've definitely really opened up lots of different doors. I think it's been great. I've loved it.
Yeah, I think there's been, like you said, like a lot of stuff has kind of come through that maybe like, isn't necessarily just like the fixed energy within itself.
Yeah.
The thing is, like, again, as we know, like you can never read anything in astrology as a singular placement, because it's always being touched and activated or stimulated or rubbed the wrong way by something else. And I think that so much is happening concurrently with the current fixed placements that one cannot come without the other. But I think that to wrap up, like for those of you again that do have fixed placements, like what you resist persists. However, you need to not be pushing against time, because with Saturn being one of the main players, things will culminate in their own time through this, but you need to move through that process. Like if you're resisting it, it's going to feel worse. And it's Saturn on a lot of your suns, right? On a lot of your moons or your personal planets. Like Saturn and personal planets like are some of the hardest transits that you can go through, but they're still quite rare, right? Like Tiarnie said, like Saturn on your sun, it's once in every 30 years. I mean, we haven't even touched on like those that are having their Saturn return through all of this, like my Saturn in Aquarius pals. Like, what a time to have a Saturn return, right?
And your Pluto and Scorpio pals too.
Yes, and anyone with Pluto in Scorpio, you are having Uranus opposite your Pluto at this time. So
and Saturn square that Pluto. So there's a real
Pluto, and then it's making like a fixed cross if you have anything making that up in Leo. So it's like, it's kind of like a deeply karmic phase. You need to be looking at all of these houses to see where this cross is playing out for you. Like date wise specifically, it's going to be Pluto in Scorpio generation that are more like the midpoint. So it's like if you were born like 86, 87 to maybe 89 at a stretch is who is like most deeply affected by this because of Saturn. Like those of you that are born later, like 94, even 95, Saturn will be out of Aquarius by the time you're having your Uranus Pluto opposition. And you're going to have that quite young, actually. You're going to have that actually maybe in your late 20s or early 30s. But it's a lot because, Uranus Pluto is what, I mean, to me, it's like really one of the most, like the ultimate transformations that you can have. It's an absolute fast tracking of whatever it is that you are moving through at that time. But throwing Saturn in there again, right, it becomes contradictory because Saturn, like Uranus is all about like expansion, activation, and Saturn's like not on my watch, right? Like, and so then Pluto, like Pluto in Scorpio, our generation is like, we're the first generation to really kind of come through and be like, yeah, I'm traumatized. Yeah, I am depressed. Yeah, we were the pioneers of like emo, for fuck's sake. Like emo, like depression was a trend, and it's not to make light of that. It's like, but those of you that have Pluto and Scorpio know what I'm saying, and you get the joke, right? Like it's because we have to try and find a way out of it, oftentimes through humor or, you know, these things, because otherwise, my God, like the suffering that we would be experiencing. But like from an evolutionary perspective, we have come from some of the most traumatic periods in history on an evolutionary soul level, whether that's collective or whether that's what you actually personally went through in a past life. You know, you need to work with an evolutionary astrologer to figure these points out. But for the most part, our generation, this period of like 84 to 95, we have gone through some shit. And this is why early in our life can feel incredibly traumatic and chaotic until we find tools to start taking our power back. You know, one of the things I love about Pluto in Scorpio or evolutionary astrology is you want to learn to work with the polarity, right? So even if you have no planets in Taurus, the opposing axis or polarity point of your Pluto is going to be somewhere in Taurus. And so this is why our generation is really has this like deep desire, I think, to like return to the land. And that doesn't mean packing up everything and, you know, fucking off to the middle of nowhere. Like, it can be, if you can do that and you want to, amazing. But for most of us, like, that's actually not feasible. But it's why we have this sort of interest in, you know, another astrologer said this, and I'm hating that I'm forgetting this now because I want to be quoting, but sorry if you're listening. But this astrologer had said about like this generation through evolutionary astrology, like being interested in things like permaculture and wanting to cultivate, like transforming yourself through the Taurus space. Because if you're staying in that Scorpio space again, like we just talked about with the nodes, but generationally for us, we live this every day. So what the collective is going to have for the next 18 months, we live it through our Scorpio placement. So, you know, this is with the nodes coming here, it's a perfect opportunity to free yourself from that Plutonian trauma that you were probably feeling like in a perpetual cycle with, and moving into this space of like connecting with your resources, connecting with the land, doing what you can in some capacity to be working from a much more naturalized kind of space. And that is where you're going to feel your return to power, your return to self. Yeah, I think that's it. Tangent again, but anyway, take that as you will, my fellow Pluto in Scorpios. But yeah, you know, I hope that this has been insightful for all of you. You know, like I said, even if you don't have fixed placements, you have fixed houses, you're going through these transits. But if you have fixed planets, Tiarnie and I feel you. We get it.
We do. We do.
And yeah, it's definitely why this particular conversation has taken most of this year to come together, because again, I think we both had to live it and feel into it. And again, for me, like all of my planets are on these degrees of the retrograde, so it's like, oh, it's a lot, you know. And as an astrologer, like I could see this coming. Of course, I could read a book and go, oh, Saturn conjunct my sun, okay, but my God, like the difference of actually, it's always in a way that we cannot comprehend. Like the last time I had this, I was 3 years old. And one interesting note actually is, and this is why I just want to say in terms of like ancestral work and family astrology, it's so interesting to look into this stuff. You know, at that age, I was with my grandparents every day. My parents worked. So, you know, before I went to school, I feel like I was almost in a way raised by my Uma and Ulpa. And so that was a really beautiful time for me when Saturn was conjunct to my sun. But, you know, Saturn's sun, it's always a connection with the masculine, right? Some sort of authority figure through masculine lineage. And so as soon as Saturn came back to this point now at age 33, my grandfather passed away. And so it's easy in hindsight to look at these cycles because, you know, we don't, like some people say you can predict death and you can look at death charts, blah, 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 but that's not the perspective I'm coming from, but just how Saturn really did bring in that, you know, connection. And then I guess like a shift, you know, Aquarius is my 12th house, it's the spirit. So my grandfather transitioned into spirit at this point in his life. Like when the sun was square Saturn in Scorpio season last year, to the day, my father called me to say that he had cancer. So it's so interesting, these patterns that we see. I'm not saying this to scare you guys, like, because these things weren't they're just part of life, right? But I could really see that like Pluto in Scorpio theme for me, because the sun was conjunct my Pluto that day, sorry, is what I was trying to say, whilst Saturn was just preparing to move into Aquarius. So it was really interesting. And sorry, the sun was square my dad's Saturn the day he had his operation. Like, it's just crazy. Like, sorry, conjunct, I'm getting confused now. But yeah, where I'm going with this is like, it's all there, guys. It's all in your chart. It's all like, look at your lineage, look at your family, look at the cycles. Like, there's so many concurrent things that you were experiencing together. Like, even Tiarnie, like what you shared about, like, you know, things that are repeating for you from these times from 99 and stuff that we were talking about. Like, it's like a labyrinth, like you said. And you know, everything has its time and its place. And these time and places can be good, feel good things, or they can be challenging experiences. But, you know, you will come through this. And I just sort of want to share that with those of you that are maybe having a more challenging sort of, in terms of, you know, experiencing loss and death and these types of things through these placements, you know, like, it makes complete sense seeing that happening now. But would I ever have wanted this? Of course not, you know, because in any other time I would have been able to go back to Australia and be with my grandfather when he passed away. But these times we're living in now, like, that was impossible. So could we have ever predicted that? No, of course not, because what we are living in now is something that is so unknown for all of us, you know, and we will shift and move through this, but we just have to take it like moment by moment now. And so whatever it is that you're going through, particularly if you have, like, I'm saying this specifically, to be honest, for luminaries, like sun and moon in particular in fixed signs, this is probably where you're feeling a lot of family ancestral stuff. So I'd love to know, like, if there's anything that's come up for you, like, share it with us in the comments, or, you know, on Instagram and stuff like that, because through sharing our stories, we heal, you know. But yeah, I think we've talked a lot. How, I can't even tell. So long. Probably this is like an hour and a half or something. I don't know.
I'd say so. Yeah.
So, you know, let's.
And ultimately, really quickly, I just want to say one last thing before we wrap up. Is sharing astrology is never out of fear. And if you feel fear when an astrologer shares something, that's that level of being attached. And that's where there has to be that emotional intelligence as well when it comes to astrology, because you know what Katie just shared about her, you know, sun Saturn at 3, live with the grandfather, sun Saturn at 33, grandfather passed away. I mean, you can't make that up. And it's not about going, well, in 30 years it'll happen again and something must happen. But the thing is it could have been anything. It could have been, you know, it could have been a million different things. It could have been the partner, you know, that's still a masculine. Like, yes, it makes sense that it was the father or the father line, like the grandfather, of course. But you know, these are the same things. Like, Pluto hit my IC and my dad died. Like, I wasn't looking 30 years ago, oh, when Pluto hits my IC, will my dad die? No, it's not about predicting death, and it's not about being in fear. Again, like, understanding your chart is about being prepared and being aware. You can be prepared enough to go, this is going to happen for me, but then you're not going to be prepared for exactly how that unfolds. And that's wherein lies the mystery, and actually wanting to surrender to the mystery and go, this is okay. Like, I'm not going to try and pinpoint everything. It's that whole, like, oh, Mercury's retrograde, don't do anything. It's like, well, no, do the thing, but just understand that Mercury's retrograde. Like, it's not a big deal. And even though these death and all these things are a big deal and we can see them in the chart, it's just amazing. And I mean, it's every astrologer's, like, some things play out in people's charts. I'm like, look, I know this is just like textbook. Like, this is textbook. I don't want to take away from you what you're going through. But as an astrologer, like, you're like, holy shit, like, of course this happened because X, Y, and Z, like, it just adds up. So know that there's never any fear. I always say nothing to fear, everything to watch. You know, everything's just around that with astrology. Nothing's ever shared to induce fear. It's actually shared to induce awareness so that you can be prepared and to understand. And the only last thing I want to share is that be mindful in Scorpio season, because Scorpio season is that last leg of what's going on. Well, for some of us, obviously, well, for someone like me, Scorpio season is going to be quite big, even though I've got Uranus in Scorpio, because there's what have we got? Uranus and Taurus. Yeah, so we've had Leo season. So Leo season was big. Scorpio season is going to be big again, because there's this. So if you're a Leo and you've got Aquarius and Taurus placements, Scorpio is going to be big for you. I'm just saying it as a general umbrella, because it, it's within this. It will be a fixed T-square again. So there's so much of that going on. So I just wanted to say, remember Scorpio season. Like, don't fall asleep in Scorpio season, because it'll be another big one. It'll be a doozy, but it's been awesome. Awesome.
Because that Scorpio season, that's going to be only a few weeks before the final Saturn Uranus square at Christmas, like we said. So that's Scorpio, and Scorpio season is it's about endings and release and transformation. So that's kind of like the final transformative process for the final
of this fixed energy. Yeah, love that. Yeah, absolutely.
So is it, watch for that time, look at that Scorpio house. That's giving you, again, an opportunity, a way forward in preparation for the houses that have been activated through the square a few weeks later.
Yes.
Perfect. Well, on that note, love, I think we can wrap this up.
I think that we've exhausted all avenues on most things. I mean, we could always come back and just pick up where we left off, but I think that it's a nice long podcast for now.
Yes. So on that note, everyone, thank you as always for joining us for these talks. We love to kind of to go deep, and like we said, just allow them to go where they need to go. And and like Tiarnie said, to kind of wrap that up, like, it's never about inducing fear. I didn't look at those transits in my own life and think fear. I just went like, oh my fucking God, like it was all there, right? And it's not putting me into that space of, like Tiarnie said, in 30 years, oh my God, this is going to happen. It's just like, it is what it is, Who
wants to live like that?
No, yeah.
Like, it's obsessive. It's just, it's too much. It's out of balance. It's out of alignment to live like that. Like, as obsessed with astrology as I am, and it's just an embodied way that I live my life, just like, anything that someone might do, but it's not obsessive to the point that it would debilitate me. It's not it's not excessive to the point that I look at transits every single day by the minute. Oh my God, this is happening right at this second. Oh, I need to do this. But like, fuck that. Fuck living like that. Like, fuck that. Like, boring. Just experience your chart, activate your chart, embody your chart, and be here now. Be present with what's going on now. And then you'll get the best from your chart, and you're creating your future now anyway, not by looking at fucking books and transits of what's going to happen. Like, yes, an astrologer wants to look a few years ahead because we get excited and we have like little astro orgasms, and it's like, oh my God, I've been waiting for this. Like, this is amazing. But the thing is that I'm not living for that. I'm not like constantly living in the future. I'm living here, present to the activations that are happening now. And with these outer planets, because they're slower moving, it's a long-term thing. It's not just wham bam thank you ma'am. We're building something new, so it's exciting at the same time. Invite that excitement in.
Yes. So my loves, thank you as always. We hope you enjoyed this. Please feel free to share anything in the comments with us. Any like kind of things that have resonated with you, any experiences, like we would love to know, because absolutely, it's not just us. And we will be back at some point in the future with another conversation soon. Much love.
We will. Bye.
Okay, bye.